been a week of deadlines in Major League Baseball. We had the Rule 5 deadline. Today we have the non-tender deadline. We'll talk about one Guardian who's back for next year avoiding arbitration. We'll talk about the other cases, some other arbitration candidates that might get put on the street for the Guardians to negotiate with. And the Guardians have another new front office member. Lots to talk about on a Friday edition of Locked On Guardians.
Tanner Bagger of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Triston McKenzie's got some money to bet on things, but he shouldn't do that. One MVP almost got in trouble for doing that, so he shouldn't do that. But Triston McKenzie's back for 2025. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about some other Guardians arbitration candidates, some other teams who might let go of their arbitration candidates. And as I said, the Guardians have a new front office member. We will get to know that front office member at the end of today's show.
Yep, they love to get people from the Giants. That's what we call it, tease.
Yeah, the way it's going.
Yeah. Speaking of teases, I am. I won't complete that sentence. I am Jeff Ellis, one of your co-hosts here. It's a Friday edition. It's been a long day.
A long week.
Honestly, I think today was my worst day ever as a teacher. So it's been one of those days. I want to thank everyone for joining us here today on the show. I'm Jeff Ellis. I used to write about baseball at Scott 24/7, where I was on ESPN radio occasionally and local drive time, and had a fun time with that. And then for some reason, Locked On decided, hey, let's talk about baseball and let's go get Jeff Ellis, which is a statement no one has ever or will ever make again. And then they realized the error of their ways and brought in a better host in Justin here to join me.
And I wasn't even their first choice, but here I am anyway, Jeff. So
we're the second stringer.
We're the second stringers, but you know what? We're bringing the energy off the bench. Hey, look, I'm Justin Latta, and I've been covering the Guardians minor league system since 2007. I have written for almost every blog that has ever existed as well, and Cleveland Guardians baseball blogosphere history, Guardians Baseball Insider, and the News Herald, the Morning Journal. Yeah, we've been doing this since 2007. Hey, look, we're the second stringers. We're bringing the energy. Nobody else is talking about the Guardians 5 days a week. We are here 5 days a week, coming up with all kinds of ideas, storylines, talking about every corner of this roster, this organization. So someone's doing it, even though people don't notice. Some people don't notice. Our listeners notice every day. We got a shout out to everydayers.
They noticed my root beer container in the background. That was
yeah, everyone loved that. We got to shout out some guys from yesterday. There were some people from yesterday. We had a lot of really awesome comments yesterday. Jeff, do you have those real quick?
I don't have those.
Way to go, Jeff. You let us down.
We were talking about writing them down yesterday, and then, like I said, it was a day at work, so nothing podcast related got done, unfortunately. But we'll get to you guys next week. I am sorry.
I'm trying to pull it up now,
but
can't find it on our thing.
While Justin is doing that, I can vamp and say on today's show, we're gonna talk about like Justin said, those non-tender candidates.
Tom Martinovic is one of them. Said great show, thank you.
And then we've also taken some time, probably too much time, honestly, before the show to put together some names that could be non-tendered that we like. I definitely went hitter heavy, so that'll be I think a fun discussion, looking at some guys trying to do what the Guardians love to do. The one thing we know they love: buy low.
Yeah, this was supposed to be our free agent preview episode, and then we pivoted because we said we wanted to wait until the non-tender announcements came out on Friday. So Monday we'll do our free agent preview. So this is our free agent pre-preview with who could get non-tendered. We'll start
now
there.
The free agent class is poo-poo.
It's not great, no. So this can only add to it if some guys get non-tendered. So we're going to wait until Monday for that. But one guy we know will be back for 2025, which is not a surprise, is Triston McKenzie. Robert Murray reported that he settled the Guardians at $1.95 million. He was projected by MLB trade rumors to get 2.4. So they come in a little under there. That's a good deal for the Guardians.
I was kind of surprised he was expected to get that much after back-to-back disappointing years.
Yeah, I was too, for sure, especially with the injuries. I mean,
Yeah.
2020 or 2023 was an injury, and 2024 was just
2024 is just one of the worst pitchers in baseball.
performance. So that's a really good question. Is look, he's going to be out of options in 2025.
He's
so
no Ben Lively.
He is like Ben Lively, where he doesn't have options, but he is not like Ben Lively, where you don't know what you're going to get from him in 2025. So, what should we expect from Triston McKenzie in 2025? Do you think the Guardians are going to give him? I assume they will. They're going to give him every opportunity to make the rotation out of spring training, but he's got to be on the 26-man roster, or if he's so bad in spring training, do they end up DFAing him and trading him? Like, is that going to be an option coming into spring training? Is it going to be that close?
I think you have to at least discuss it, because the issue here is he actually hasn't had that many good years. And before anyone gets mad at me,
Like 1.5.
Yeah, he was great in 22. And then outside of that, like if you want to count the 2020 season, which was just, 33 innings, he was solid, but 2021 was not good. 2023 was, the whole year was hurt, and the little bit he pitched was not good. And 2024, I mean, by most measures, he was one of the worst starters in baseball. Like, we're talking about of the last, again, this is like the Beaver issue. It's like, of his last 4 years, there's 1 good and 3 atrocious.
Didn't he have a good half of 21? Like, didn't he come back from the minors?
He did. He eventually figured it out, but that's again because
that led him,
because in 21 and in 24, he was the worst pitcher in baseball for stretches of it, which is not ideal from what I understand. The thing I will say is he struggled with health in the minors. He was another guy. He also was kind of a slow developmental guy. Like, I think we all expected him to add more velocity. And there were points where he flashed velocity, but he never could keep it consistently. That I wonder that, if this doesn't work out, I've always been the person, and there's good people out there, arguing that I'm just doing this because it's what I've been guessing for years. He might be a decent reliever if starting doesn't work out, because maybe that velocity that we see him occasionally touch could be more consistent, could kind of pare down the pitches. And I'll say this, at $1.95 million, they are paying him like a reliever, which, I think I agree with you. You give him every chance to start. Don't let him start. But if it doesn't work out, I don't think you necessarily DFA him at the end of camp, but maybe he starts out as a long, you're a long guy in the bullpen, and you occasionally try him in multitudes of roles. I mean, maybe he can be like, remember Chris Stefanski at peak, where he was like that multi-inning weapon for the Astros? It's like, maybe it could be something like that. Or if not, I mean, there's a world where you just try him out. He's being paid at such a rate that you can afford to have him be the last pitcher on your team if starting doesn't work out. And if it does, great. Maybe he could be your number 2. I think Tanner's still the 1 to me, but like, it could completely change your lineup. But I don't think you can count on anything.
No, I think you go into spring training with him as a starter, even though you're right,
Agreed.
He's like a reliever. But I think you go into spring training with him as a starter. You give him every opportunity to win the rotation job. I really wonder about the bullpen situation too. I think it makes sense, but I also wonder, like, given his history, is he a guy that you feel like can throw 2 days in a row? That's something I would wonder. Like, that's the same thing with Daniel Espino. It's kind of similar. It's like people tend to think that, oh, put him in the bullpen, he'll avoid injuries. That's not really what happens in the bullpen. You don't avoid injuries. Like, if anything, it's more of a risk for a guy like McKenzie, who's had health issues, because relievers are expected to pretty much go like 90 to 100% every inning they pitch, right? Like, you're talking about, 3 outs or 4 outs, whatever it is. You're expected to go 90 to 100%, and you're expected to be able to do that 2 out of 3 days, 2 days in a row. At some points, Triston McKenzie, I don't know if you can trust him to be a guy like that. You might have to, but like you said, maybe if things in spring training don't look good. And here's the problem: you also can't. And they're not going to base spring training off of performance. Like, Triston McKenzie goes out and throws 5 outings in spring training, and he throws 5 no-hit innings. Like, they're not going to be like, oh, it's all fixed, he's great. And if he's terrible for 5 innings, that doesn't mean he's not going to make, spring training doesn't really tell you a whole lot in terms of results. But maybe your best bet is to go in with him as a long man, take the pressure off. But you need him for depth, right? Like, I don't think this team can afford I think things would have to be very bad in spring training for them to go that route. And we'll see what happens the rest of the offseason. But I think you have to.
I think he has to
him
prove
around.
himself. I don't think
He does, but I think you have to. I think you have to give him time to try to prove himself, because I think you're going to need the depth, and you might get to the end of April or mid-May, and he might not turn things around. You might have to make a hard call, but I think early in the year, given what they went through last year, I think you have to carry him on the roster at this price. You have to carry him on the roster, and given the history with him, I think you have to, not because you have emotional ties to him, but because you have time and money invested in him. I think you have to carry him for the depth and see if you can not. This is a terrible analogy, but it's like a partner you've been with a long time, and you just need to see if you can make it work one last time. I think that's maybe
so it's going to fail miserably, because when you're in that situation, that always fails. You've just
I don't have any experience there, but I'm just that's
anyone who has done that
Friday
will tell you that never works out, and it's always terrible.
This might not work out. This might not work out.
I think the thing I'll say is, it's a cheap depth option. It's the same amount they paid $99 a year ago, and
to do nothing.
If they can get a starter on the market, it makes it a lot harder for him. And you got him and Allen battling, and it's depth. Depth is a good thing. Depth, and more depth.
Yeah, at least Allen has options, so you can keep McKenzie in the major league roster. If something happens where you need to option Logan Allen, which would be a problem, to AAA, at least he has options, and you can make things work that way. All right, so we didn't really learn a whole lot about the Triston McKenzie thing, other than he's going to come back cheap, and Cleveland's got at least a cheap depth option. They can at least roll out there and hope for the best, because the upside's high and the downside is absolutely zero. And I mean absolute zero. Let's talk about the other Guardians arbitration eligible candidates. We'll see if anybody gets non-tendered today. We'll talk about some other teams' potential non-tender candidates that could be a fit for the Guardians. And again, the Guardians have a new front office member. We'll have to talk about that on the rest of today's show. If you're a hockey fan, had a lot of fun on Thursday night for the Columbus Blue Jackets. My wife was at the game in Columbus for a concert, and she attended the game through Gametime. She used Gametime picks to filter out the fluff, to show incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Is going to tell you where the best deals are for each game, based on the section, based on the price. And if you've heard me talk about Gametime before on the show, I love the all-in pricing feature, because if you turn it on, it tells you exactly what you're going to pay to get into your event. You're not going to put your tickets in checkout and head over there to pay for them, and all of a sudden you've got $40 or $50 in fees you didn't see coming. You put the all-in pricing on, it tells you exactly what you are paying to get in the door of your event. We need a lot more of that transparency these days, I think, and Gametime delivers that. And we know prices for these events, any of them, hockey games, basketball, concerts, all the prices go down before the event starts, and you can check all that on Gametime, make a last-minute decision, save yourself some money, and enjoy your event, and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get $20 off your first purchase on Gametime. So terms apply, but create that account and redeem our code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your very first purchase. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Gametime for the Guardians on Friday to decide who they're going to keep, who they're going to send packing into the offseason.
Based off that hockey game, they should sign Kent Johnson.
That's a great idea. Not anybody named Elvis. No. Last prospect the Guardians had named Elvis was Elvis Araujo. I was a big fan of Elvis.
I was big lefty. I thought for sure he'd be at least a reliever. He had good velocity.
By the Phillies. Speaking of which, we nicknamed him the ladies' man when he was in Lake County. He was giving out roses to people. He was very suave when he was with Lake County. I remember
him being a lot of fun in Akron as well. Like he was just
he was a 6'7" lefty that 395. That's always a lot of fun. What's not a lot of fun is like Sam Hentges is going to get 1-4. I think there's two guys on this list. So Josh Naylor is projected at 12. Look, the Guardians are going to tender him a contract on Friday, and that'll go to arbitration, or they'll settle later in the offseason. Maybe they'll settle on Friday.
I think they tender this entire list.
Huh?
I think they tender the entire list.
Yeah, the only questions I have are Sandlin and Hentges. Like,
I think
we talked about this earlier in the offseason. I think Sandlin's too cheap to do with this.
Yeah.
Or not Sandlin, I'm sorry, Hentges.
Yes.
But
And when Henches is on, he's really good. And like
we know he's not going to pitch all of 2025. That's
fine,
the only consideration.
1.4 is cheap. Like when he comes back, if he is what he is, then you're happily paying him 1.4 to do nothing.
And you might settle with him at 1. Like you might get 1 million. You might go lower than that. So for 1 million, you're not going to let that walk. And for his upside,
I agree though. Sandlin's the one where like if I was running the team, I'm probably saying goodbye. Yeah,
that 1.6. We just talked about McKenzie at 1.9. It's like if McKenzie ends up being a reliever, what do you do with Nick Sandlin?
And we talked about Eli Morgan yesterday a lot. Go listen to yesterday's
show. He was at 1 million.
And the thing with Morgan is we talked about his inconsistencies, and how he hadn't put together a full year yet. I mean, Nick Sandlin makes Eli Morgan look like Emmanuel Clase in terms of consistency, or Mariano Rivera. Like, I mean, it's just like Nick Sandlin when we'll have a month where he's the second best reliever in the bullpen, and then he'll have 2 months where you can't put him out in anything other than blowouts. It's just that's hard.
Yeah, and he's also had some injury concerns.
Yes,
in the past. I mean, he was hurt. He had a lower back issue this year as well. So, yeah, the Sandlin one, I think you're right because with Henches you can just offer like $1 million, and I think you're probably good there. Sandlin, I don't know. Like, I guess if you combine moving Morgan's money and dropping Sandlin's money, that's $2.6 million. Who knows what you can? That 2 figures alone is not going to get you anything, but at least it could be part of something bigger.
If you remember my earlier math, you add that into that like 18.4. I mean, that's 20 million.
Yeah, so that
gets you maybe 2 free agents.
Maybe. Ben Lively 3.2 million projection. That's a no-brainer. They will tender that. We talk about Josh Naylor. They'll tender him a contract, and we'll go. They'll
be tender with him.
You have to be tender with Josh Naylor. We'll see what they do with the rest of the offseason there. Lane Thomas 8.3. That's a no-brainer. Stephen Kwan at 4.3. That's a no-brainer. But the question about that is, are we too late for a Stephen Kwan extension?
Yes, we were too late from the beginning. Let's be honest. I mean, his response. Come on, we remember the response video that got taken down about their offer where he
wants more than Miles Straw money, and
he wanted more than Miles Straw money when he was
if they offered Stephen Kwan anything to the level they offered Tanner Bybee, that would be a slap in the face to Stephen Kwan.
They have not, from what we have heard, their offers really have not been competitive to these players.
No.
From what we've heard talking with a few of our connections, the offers going out have not really been competitive. I mean, a few years ago, I was talking about trying to offer Kwan. I can't remember what the offer was. It was someone else who had gotten an extension in the outfield, and I was trying to offer maybe a little bit less. And now that deal would look fantastic. At the time, I was called insane. And we'll see how he does next year. He's probably going to have some regression as well, just because of the profile. But yeah, I think the ship has sailed on everybody on the roster getting an extension, based on the reports we've heard from a few people.
Yeah, I don't see an extension for anybody this offseason, truthfully. I mean, if they do, I'll be surprised, but I don't see it based on what they've done. And they also, the TV situation, I think is going to be into that too. And I think they want to have some money to add externally. So we'll see about that. Let's talk about some guys that are not currently on the Guardians roster, but we feel like could be. Where do you want to start? You want to start with a couple of pitchers, or you want to start with some of the hitters you found?
I don't know. What are you feeling? I don't have a strong preference one way or another.
I mean, the most interesting one to me is a reunion, and that's Aaron Savali for the Brewers. Who
I don't think they're going to let him go after cutting Colin Ray. They just don't have the depth. So I will say, living in Milwaukee, there's been zero rumors of Savali being let go. They were very happy with him after their acquisition.
At $8 million? Okay.
Yes.
I guess I could see that then. You brought up JT Brubaker.
I do.
The
he
Rockies
just hasn't
for
pitched
sure.
in 2 years.
Yeah, the Rockies for sure. I don't think Cal Quantrill. Speaking of old friends,
they're not going to tender
Quantrill.
Quantrill led the National League in walks last year,
which is
because
bizarre.
It's because he went to like 60% splitter and then didn't have the control, and then the league figured out all he was doing was throwing a splitter almost all the time, and the league caught up to him. He ended up having a sub-2 WAR. Like, he did not have a good year. Like, at the end of the day, he was not worth what they paid him. He's gonna get non-tendered.
Do you bring him back? I think it's
Why?
got to be a minor. I think he might be
No.
fishing for a minor league deal. And he's
Yeah,
going
I
to be
mean,
30.
it's like it's 2 years in a row of him being a sub league average starter in his
Yeah.
age in his 30s. Like you don't. I mean, they brought back Carrasco, but that was a minor league deal, as you're saying here. I think he might be in line for a minor league deal. I
That's
mean,
what I'm
I think
thinking.
he might get more than that. He might get like somewhere between 4 or 5 million because he was worth close to 2 WAR, whereas Carrasco was completely
He made
worthless.
6.5 last year.
Yeah, but he's in line for 9. They're not paying him 9. I think he could get
No.
like he might get
3.
a little bit. He might get a guaranteed contract somewhere.
So that's not an option. Milwaukee's going to pick up Eric Haas's deal. I was thinking about backup catchers. Would love to bring more guys back. Speaking of reunions, Enyel De Los Santos for sure is not getting a contract from the White Sox. He was horrendous last year. The Padres sent him to the Yankees. He pooped the bed with the Yankees. They let him go. He wound up on the White Sox. He's only projected to get 1.7, but he was just horrendous. 5.96 FIP. But again, maybe Cleveland is like, hey, we know how to make you work, and here's a minor league deal. Come back and do what you did in 2022.
Yeah, there's a chance sometimes they do like to go back, though they haven't actually had a lot of success with those bounce back types.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the last one they brought back, like a second tour of duty.
I mean,
like,
Shaw.
That kind of worked in 2022.
I mean, it did at the start for about 2 months, and then it was pretty bad.
Yeah. We stuck with him a long time. Yeah, Carrasco didn't work this year.
No.
I'm trying to think of who that's really worked.
Joe Smith?
It's better.
Joe Smith
better. Well, that was a
decent
trade. That was a trade, not a signing.
So that doesn't count. But Joe
Smith because they love to do that. They love to bring back guys. I mean, they brought back all kinds of guys in trades. Coco Crisp and
Doug
Kenny
Jones
Lofton and Jim Thome. So
yeah,
they love to do that.
They haven't done as much recently, but yeah, it was definitely a thing for a time.
What are some hitters you came up with, or other guys you came up with?
So I'll start off. Jake Fraley is really interesting to me. Maybe not the most exciting to everyone else out there. He's got a strong arm, plays right field. In the past, he's played left, he's played center. I think he's even played a little first base. I could be wrong there. And the reason I like him is
first base.
No first base. I'm wrong there. Okay. Maybe he played at LSU and I got it in my head, but probably not. I'm probably just making things up. I'm getting old, brain fog. But either way, Fraley is a right-handed bat. They need.
He's a left-handed bat.
Or I'm sorry, he's a left-handed bat. Boy, the brain fog's bad. He hits right-handed pitching. He's a platoon candidate with someone like Noel. This team is very good right now in terms of facing lefties. They need more guys who hit righties. Through his career, like last year, he's a 101, and that's by far his worst year versus right-hand pitching. Before that, he was like a 130, a 115, and a 130. So he's been kind of, in an ideal world, you put him and Lane Thomas in right field, and that's a great platoon. Like, if he can be who he has been typically, if they're both 130s, then you've got like the equivalent of Bryce Harper in your right field situation. Like, it's not a 1-to-1 because you don't have the power and stuff like that. But in terms of weighted runs created plus, that's a high level platoon. That's like, a truer one might be like that year where Naquin and Rayburn were both fantastic out there, and you had like, wasn't that the combination? Do I have it wrong? Was it Naquin and
Chisenhall?
Was it Chisenhall?
Chisenhall and Geyer?
No, it wasn't Geyer. It was definitely, I felt like it was the year Naquin was out there with someone.
Naquin wasn't up till 2016. Ryan Rayburn was way gone.
Okay, so I can't remember who he was with that year. Maybe it was Guy. I can't remember who it was, but he had a platoon partner that won the second to last year before he left, where it was a really strong platoon that year. That was the year where
Lonnie.
It was Lonnie. Okay, yeah, where people were like, he's hitting close to 400. You should make the All-Star team. Remember that hot 2 months. But either way, it's like Fraley has some things where he fits as a platoon bat, and he's getting up there. There's a chance he fell off a cliff. But he doesn't K a lot. He walks, which is something this team needs. We've talked about their need for walks. This year he didn't walk as much.
I wouldn't say he walks a lot.
Well, that's what you're hoping to get back to. In 2023, he was at 9.7, 65th percentile. This year it dropped to 6.8. So you're trying to how much do you think? How much decline? Mike Yastrzemski, just because he makes a lot of money, he's going to be, I think, 9.5, or I think it's 9.5. And he is an older player at this point in time. Let's see.
He was horrendous last year, though.
I mean, he was still a 108, the
106,
106. He was still no, but I mean, I'd kill for a 106 in the outfield. So he still gets things done, and he with 18 home runs, 16 doubles, has some extra base hits. If they don't tender him a contract, I think you absolutely do talk to him. And again, he's a left-handed bat, which they need. They need left-handed bats on this team. And then if he gets let go, another left-handed bat that kind of stands out to me is Andrew Vaughn.
He's
this
right-handed.
is awesome. Right-handed. Man, why am I? Yeah, you're right. He is right-handed. Again, I'm going to say we had I'm just going to be honest with everyone. We had a traumatic event at school today, and my brain is not fully with it now. So I'm just going to put that out there and apologize. The reason I'm confused here is because Vaughn would fit perfectly with Manzardo. So if there is a World 2 where you trade Naylor for a pitcher, which I don't know if that can happen, but if it were, like Vaughn historically is a 115 versus lefties and a 97 versus righties. So that's not great, but it's good enough where you could feel comfortable playing him every day. He should be the DH. He's a terrible fielder. But the other side of this is a guy who has kind of regressed a little bit. He's moving into what should be his prime years. We just watched Michael Kopech blossom the minute he got away from the stinking pile of crud that is the Chicago White Sox development. There's a world where maybe, hey, if they decide they don't want to pay Vaughn 6.5, you get him out. I mean, I really like Tim McCall. I thought this is a guy who had a chance to win a batting title. I'm all for the post-Chicago White Sox dead cat bounce to help us.
And, De Los Santos on that list, too. So
yeah.
Who knows? One of the player, or not a player, someone coming to Cleveland who could help them in the minor leagues. Guardians have a new front office member. It's their second front office addition this week. We'll talk about that next.
But first, we are going to talk about our good friends over at FanDuel. And I say good friends because I appreciate everyone who sticks with us in the offseason. Every dayer, whether it's a watcher, a fan, or a sponsor. So thank you to FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with America's #1 sports book, FanDuel. Because right now, new customers, when you bet $5, you can get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So just visit FanDuel.com today and join. Then you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. I guess it should be topical. Aren't the Browns a surprise right now? Aren't they currently winning? It's a shock anytime they're leading, right? So if you had placed a $5 bet there, you might be winning $150 in bonus bets. So that's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Guardians have made their second front office addition of the week. This one makes a little more sense in terms of title. So Rob Cerfolio, who is the director of player development, he moved on to the St. Louis Cardinals, we know, for earlier this month to become their assistant GM, and is kind of taking the same role in terms of player development, but gets an AGM title, which is why they were able to hire him away.
Yeah.
So we talked earlier this week about Bobby Kinney coming over from the Rays. Today, it was from I'm going to get the source wrong. It was who was the source?
Risotto. I've got it here. Steven Risotto from
Steven Rizzo.
Risotto, who's a 95.7 The Game producer out in San Francisco.
Yeah, Risotto. Okay. Alyssa Nakken. So Nakken? I don't know.
Then every time I look up in my tabs, I'm like, what do I have open? I'm like, oh no, like it's not, anyone with that last name, it would stand out. But either way, I mean, she was a great softball player. It's interesting how many people are leaving the Giants with their changeover at the top and how many people Cleveland in the last 2 years have brought in from the Giants organization.
Yeah, the Giants had a whole front office overhaul. Buster Posey came in and took over player operations over there from Farhan Zaidi, who was at one time very well thought of as an executive. But Alyssa Nakken got to come back last year. So when Gabe Kapler was fired in 2023, and they brought in who they bring in? Bob Melvin.
Yeah.
Bob Melvin kept her as the bench coach the year after. She was like the lone holdover. And Gabe Kapler was talking about her being a rising star. A lot of people feel like she's a rising star. She had a kind of a role all over with the Giants. She didn't really have it's not a defined role, but they let her do a whole lot of different things. It's been some pregame work, some outfield work. I think she's really been part of everything. Field coordinator, director of defense. I'm sorry, that was Correa, but she's kind of had her hand in everything over there. in terms of player development and pregame stuff and on the field stuff, base running, outfield, infield groups, spring training. She's going to join the Guardians in a assistant player development role. So they don't really have a director of player development right now.
Yeah.
Bobby Kinney was brought over as director of baseball operations, which again is not a title they've ever had that we've seen on their list before. But also kudos. I think this is the second female the Guardians have hired in a baseball role in the last couple of years. So kudos to them for that. I think that's great. But this is not just hiring a female. This is Alyssa Nakken has been, thought of as a very highly, talking about her being a future manager. People think that she interviewed for the Giants managerial job after Kapler got fired. Like a lot of people view her as a rising star. I'm kind of curious to see why she decided to go from,
I think I have an answer,
in the dugout into more of a front office role, which sometimes people will do because Gabe Kapler's done this, and it gives you kind of a more diversified look at things. It gives you more of a background. I'm also going to point out too that she's got a degree in psychology, so we know that Grant Fink had a psychology degree.
Yep. It's two.
Alyssa Nakken
Fink has a master's in psychology.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting too that she's got. I think she also worked with some stuff in nutrition as well, and in the past, so like. It's James Harris was brought in here he previously worked with like Philadelphia Eagles and the Oregon Ducks football program on like strength and conditioning and nutrition and not traditional baseball stuff, but more, linear development sorts of things that could help out. So I'm very interested to see what kind of role she has in player development, but I think it's a good hire. I think people really like her, and I think this is a good hire. It's good they're bringing outside minds into the organization. I think they do a lot of internal promotions. I think bringing in new ideas from other organizations can be really helpful, especially from the Rays and Giants.
I can answer your question. The reason she's coming into the Cleveland organization, moving in this role, is last year she stopped going on road trips. She had a daughter last January and was kind of doing that split role. And when you move into player development, it's more of a 9-to-5 job. It's a little bit more of a.
I wouldn't say that because I've seen those guys at games.
I have as well, but like it's more of a set number of hours. You can kind of like, okay, this day I'm going late, this day I'm going. It makes it easier to be able to schedule things like childcare and do things like that. Your schedule is a little bit more known throughout the year because like minor league games happen all at the same time, right? Like if you're going to be player development, if she's going to be kind of bouncing around levels, and it gives you a chance, I think, when you're, wasn't it like Travis Fryman who wanted to move from being a manager in the minors to more player development because it is a little bit more of a solid schedule a few years ago, that it's a little less hectic. It's a little less on you as a person. So a year ago, she, after having her daughter, which kudos to her, like I think it's great to be in the workforce and keep going through with this. She also, it put some value on family and didn't do road trips with the team. So I think this is part of that. It gives her an ability to have a little bit of a solid base. And I'm sure like that was part of the discussion. Like as you have pointed out, she is a rising star. She is well thought of. This is not just some gimmick hire, which I know some people will say, like she is a absolute, legitimate, fantastic coach. I have heard, again, people love to crap talk. And we have heard through the years when there is something bad to hear about someone, you'll know.
It comes out, right?
There's nothing negative on her. Everything is people being blown away by her. So this is a fantastic hire. We know a few years ago, I believe it was Chernoff who talked about the whole idea of like he took time off in the season, like this idea of burnout and managing family and managing how you handle the season and making sure that there is a good balance. I'm sure that people like her read that article and go, oh, that's someone I want to work for, someone who's going to understand. And I think that also helps. And I think that they have worked on building a culture like that where, they get robbed for talent all the time. You're going to get a fantastic on the job training and everything else, but they're also going to value you as a human and understand that you need to have your life outside of baseball. So I think they were able to get a really up and coming baseball mind because of their reputation and their flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely. They send a lot of people out to different organizations. I mean, they just made a trade with the Cubs this week, who, again, Carter Hawkins is their GM. He came from Cleveland. Look at the people in Toronto, all their places Derek Falvey in Minnesota, they continually get picked off, like you said, from other organizations. I'm surprised James Harris is still here, quite honestly. Rob Cerfolio just got picked off, which Didn't have that on my bingo card before
No.
James
I mean,
Harris.
Valleca like got his
Right.
I can't think raised. Man, I cannot think of words today.
That's really good for podcasting, I hear.
No, I know. It's like, he was not, he was a lesser guy. So his overall, the league's opinion of him, not his portfolio has risen, but like his exposure,
He got a promotion
on
paper. He got a promotion on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good hire. And like I said before, I think it's just good they're bringing outside voices and outside thoughts into the organization because they tend to do a lot of internal hires. So when you bring in a fresh set of eyes and some fresh ideas, it can really help things. And I like the idea of non-linear thinking in terms of player development because there is the baseball side of things, but there's also the things that go along with it that they brought in James Harris for. And I think Alyssa has the same kind of things that go along with that, but also just she's got dugout experience and she's got some front office experience too. She was a baseball operations intern in San Francisco when she started. So this will be a good way for her to also get some other experience on things. So I'll be very curious to see how they tackle this next week. So next week is Thanksgiving, as everybody knows in the US anyway. It'll be a shortened week for us. So we'll be back on Monday with our free agent preview. We promised it today, but we'll be back on Monday. That is a promise, unless the Guardians make some wild news and trades over the weekend. We'll be back on Monday, the free agent preview. Probably do a top 10 Tuesday. We'll probably do a what if Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday we will obviously we'll be in your feeds Thursday because we'll record Wednesday night, but Thursday we won't be with you, or Friday.
Well, I think we'll have to just kind of sit down and we'll have through Wednesday, and then we'll see about Thursday, Friday, kind of depending on
so
schedules.
You can expect to hear from us Monday and Tuesday, and then we'll go from there. But we'll be back no matter what, and we hope you join us, and we also hope you have a good weekend. Thanks for listening, and
we'll have some fun, and hopefully you had some fun with the show. Remember to rate and review, do your part, download, subscribe. Thank you to everyone who's commenting. Today's comment question of the day is, what was your favorite Nintendo game? I don't mean Super Nintendo game. I don't mean Genesis. Favorite Nintendo game. Put that one below. I gotta think about what it is for me. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure that I know what my answer is, so I'll comment on that next week. But thank you all again. We appreciate each and every one of you everydayers. I always lean on John and David, but we've seen so many new people. But thank you all, and go Guardians, go.